For many, many years as an artist, I avoided doing self-portraits. Like, I hardly did any of them up until a couple years ago when I took an art course and I saw, maybe this is something I could do. Self-portraits are sometimes called the bravest form of art. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe there's something to that statement. Welcome one and all, I am Baru, and today I'm going to show you some of the self-portraits I did this autumn. And I'll talk a little bit about how I go about them, and maybe that will be helpful for some. I got the idea to do daily self-portraits from my art friend Melissa Martin, who took on this challenge herself. Now she's got some really fun videos on her channel that chronicle her journey, and you should check it out for sure. I decided I was going to do something similar. I intended to do a daily self-portrait, and I'd just follow my gut on any day to do whatever seemed right or interesting or fit the mood or the amount of time I had. I quickly found that I ran out of time though, and October was insanely busy, so daily became occasional. That's how it goes. One way we could avoid the awkwardness of drawing a self-portrait would be to be intentionally vague. Now this particular drawing here is mostly a single line contour drawing. Sometimes our mind can get in the way of drawing accurately. A lot of times we draw what we think we see, but doing something like a contour drawing forces us to see things in an unusual way. We see ourselves differently than others, often because we're influenced by the backwards image in the mirror, and we have intimate knowledge of our so-called flaws. And doing a task like a contour drawing, here's another one, or something that's a bit unusual might help us to see what is actually there, not what we think we see. And it's stylized enough so we're looking at the big picture shapes and lines and not the tiny details. So that might be helpful for some. Another way that we could simplify would be to maybe just draw shadows, reduce things to 2 or 3 shades, such as the one here on the right. Now this is very simple, but somehow it is actually one of the most accurate drawings of this whole lot. I don't know what that says. I was really interested in doing different types of drawings. I felt that I'd learned different things from each method. Some, like the one on the left, didn't work out as well. But that's all right. I still learned from it. One thing I was reminded of is that we often make eyes bigger than they are because we put so much importance on them. And this is an example of big ol' saucer eyes. So, yep, good reminder. And another page, all kind of graphite drawings. Now the one on the left, I really wanted to work on something in this style, just scribbles and building up over time and getting a soft likeness, at least hopefully. This one is all right, but I do one later that I think is much, much better, so stick around for that one. But you gotta try and fail a bit. People who never fail are probably not creating much. And the middle one, just pretty typical. And the one on the right was an experiment too, sort of almost a chibi style thing. It frightens me. Stay away from me, you chibi Baru. Oh my god, that thing is horrible. And here's another one. I do love the colors and the overall style of this. But man, is it hard for me to do profiles. I'll do 3/4 views all day long, but profiles I really have to psych myself up for. I think I make myself look a little bit like Johnny Cash here in this one. This was just some gouache in the background with alcohol markers for those darker bits, and a yellowish Posca paint pen for the outlining. And this was a lot of fun. The sort of severe outlines remind me a little bit of one method that I use doing portraits in general. So here, ignore the white eyes. My black ink ran out. So the whole idea with setting up a portrait is to simplify. Get the general shapes and then refine the shapes and continue to refine. This is to avoid committing to details before you have things placed correctly. So I'll start with the basic shape. In this case, I've got, fairly squarish rectangular head. But even if the head was pretty round, sometimes viewing it as a box can help. It reminds us of the depth and where the light is coming from and how we should be adding shadows. And from here, I'll add some contour lines, sometimes the outside, or sometimes I'll bisect the face. Now this is again to remind me of the depth, and knowing anatomy is probably the best way to do this, but second best is observing closely how these lines move in and out, and this gives you a hint as to the overall form and shape of the face. And then, I think this is the most important part. There are a few key points that we should be extra careful with. And these are points that are most quickly recognized by the observer's eye. And that's the corners of the eyes, the placement of the nose nearest the nostrils, and the corners of the mouth. If the portrait you're drawing isn't reading correctly, try darkening those points or make them sharper. It's amazing how much of a difference that can make. But they do need to be positioned correctly. I have great respect for the traditional Loomis head method, and I do use it a lot when I'm doing something particularly from imagination. But I find it less helpful for a portrait. What I tend to do is to use the points that I know are in the right place, and then use those to help me establish other points. So knowing where the eyes are can help you to determine the contour of the face, for instance, starting broad and then continue to refine and refine and refine. And I might use the Loomis method just to kind of check to make sure everything's making sense. And in some cases, like this photo, the shadows are very well defined, so I will certainly block those in. Now I did these lines here as kind of loose curves, but actually I usually do this kind of work with mostly straight lines. I think that usually straight lines work better because, again, it's simplifying. We get the basic shape first and then refine that. It's so tempting to jump right in with the details, and if you're skilled enough, you could probably get away with it. But I find that if I rush in, and believe me, I do sometimes, often I will find myself having to go back and make corrections. Is this the only way to do it? Absolutely not. This is just a way, and it's one that I find helpful many times. To start big with simple shapes, refine those shapes until you can place crucial points in the right place, and then use those points to help place other points and other landmarks, and then block in the shadows. If you get that far, the rest will be far more easy, and you'll be much more likely to have a portrait that works out well. Using the sort of facial mapping thing that we just talked about, you can get some fairly realistic results. Now these are just sketches, they're not completely fleshed out, but you could continue to refine these to whatever limits you decide upon. But the nice thing is you can also use the same information to distort things, such as in a caricature. I did a few of these this year, and not all of these are great likenesses, but it was an interesting thing to try out, and I really just used the same sort of method of finding the important spots on the face and then kind of distorting their locations a little bit, to continue to have somewhat of a likeness. I'm not sure they're all successful. I have a lot to learn yet on caricatures, but it was a fun project. I've kind of got that alien forehead here. Oh man, kind of glad that I'm not that bad. I also did another drawing that was just kind of doing scribbles, but this time in color. I didn't plan well about placement on the paper because I had to chop off my hair. But just scribbling around and then building up, and sort of like I've done with the circulism and pointillism type drawings, letting the colors kind of mix and create the different color tones. And here we have another graphite sketch, and I kind of got my head lopsided. I tell you, sometimes I know what to do and I just don't do it. I don't take my own advice. Sometimes I can be a really lazy artist. So anyway, do as I say, not as I do. And a really stylized one. And this one wasn't really successful, but I did enjoy using the really thick Sharpie marker on this, just kind of give it that really bold graphic look. And, with those alcohol markers. I mean, it's an interesting piece of art, but I'm not sure it really looks a whole lot like me, but there it is. And here's another one. I was just trying to work on using unusual colors, and I had already kind of put some of the marks on the background for a different project, but then I drew a little self-portrait on here, and it's all right. I do like to experiment this way when I know when the pressure's low, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's kind of in the middle like this one. And a couple other kind of quick sketches here. The ones on the left are not particularly successful. Kind of a silly face on one, and I don't know what's going on with the one on the bottom. But I do think that the one on the upper right is pretty successful, sort of a duotone look with the orange and the purple, and I think that works out pretty well. I'm pleased with that one. Now, I said that there would be another kind of scribbly graphite self-portrait, and here it is. And I actually really like this one. I took some time to build up on it slowly, and I think that that is the key to this sort of style. You kind of sneak up on the right tones in the right areas over time. And this is by no means perfection, but I am encouraged that I could get to something that I really liked out of this style. And here we have another sort of duotone sort of sketch. I do like this one too. It probably needs to go a little bit further to be really satisfying, but I think that the likeness is there at least. And I almost forgot that I had this one until I was looking at it recently. I did my hair up like the flock of seagulls guy for one of my older videos, and well, here I am, and I ran. I ran so far. I'm not a good singer, but you know what? I'm not ashamed to admit that I love a flock of seagulls. Their first 4 albums are treasures in my collection. This particular drawing, probably not a treasure, but here it is. And let's see. So with this one, I was doing experiments with paint pens. I actually really like the colors, but I dislike the tonal values, that they're just so flat. So there's really no form here. It's just a bunch of colors. So yeah, it was probably a result of poor planning on my part. And here's another kind of simple one, just some fine liner. I was trying to do something with perspective on this one. That didn't really work, but I still like the style. Sort of invokes the Inktober vibes a little bit. And this past Tuesday, we had a live session with Deb Tertio of Debbie Draws Funny. Her link is in the description. We had something that's called the Sunset Self-Portrait Session. And I was going after some like loose color combinations, and I kind of like this. I see some things that I could do to improve it, but this will do. I do kind of like the orange fine liner in there with the colored pencils. I think that gives it an interesting look. I would be very honored if you would give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It means a lot, and it helps keep this channel plugging along. But more than anything, thank you so much for stopping by today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll have another video up next week, and I hope you can join me. Until then, bye-bye.